BYU secures at least a first-round bye at the conference tournament.
This team is built to be able to make a run.
The comeback Cougs have done it in the toughest basketball conference in the country.
As March hits, the madness is in full force.
March basketball, indeed, in full force. So let's just reset where BYU men's basketball stands as of this Tuesday, March 5th, in all of the things that matter. Most importantly, where BYU is in the Big 12 standings. And right now, they are tied for 4th place.
Wait, we're not going into the West Coast Conference Tournament this year?
No Vegas for BYU basketball.
For 14 years.
No Orleans Arena.
Okay.
It is all about T-Mobile and Kansas City. So BYU tied for 4th and staring down the number 6 team in the country in a road game at Iowa State, where the fans will be out for blood. No question about it after what BYU did to the Cyclones.
Richie, enjoy that one, baby.
Yeah, Richie Saunders is public enemy number 1.
There's going to be some signs.
Quite the week for Richie Saunders. He's the hero of heroes for BYU, and then all of a sudden he is public enemy number 1 in Ames, Iowa. Oklahoma State also left on the schedule. Yep. We tend to think that BYU is probably going to hold serve and go 1-1, but we'll talk about all those specifics in just a moment.
I'll take 2-0 like last week.
Jarom, as you stare down the tournament, and you'll be there in Kansas City reporting live for BYU Sports Nation, maybe during an actual game.
It could be 2 games.
While that is happening simultaneously
Let's hope
at
it's
BYU
2
Sports
games.
Nation.
Yeah.
Do you care more about BYU's potential seeding? Maybe they're the 4, double bye. Or are you just about matchups in the Big 12 tournament?
Well, it's hard because these two are sort of connected, right? We'll dive into that in a second. It feels like BYU is going to play Texas Tech at some point, hopefully. But matchup, we want BYU to win a game more than we want them to be a high seed. Although a higher seed equals easier to win said game. But in the Big 12, it's hard, man. No matter what BYU's matchup is, it's like, dude, that is a tough game. BYU has lost to a team tied for last in the league in Oklahoma State. Like, no game is just, yep, automatic. We're winning that no matter what. So I think it is matchup. I just need BYU to win a game. If that's on Wednesday or Thursday, don't really care. If BYU wins 2, even better, Spence. They really secure what could be like a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. I don't think that winning one more game in that tournament is going to swing BYU's resume or seed line in March Madness. So I just need BYU to win a game. If that's on Wednesday in the second round as a 5 or 6, that's great. If you can win on Thursday and get to the semis and amazing. But it's about winning a game. It's not about – because if you get to be a 4 – but you lose, well, who cares that you got a 4? You got to win a game there and pad the resume just a little bit. That way you have this nice, hey, BYU got this late win prior to Selection Sunday. Remember, this isn't like WCC tournament where it's on Monday and then all the games get played and then you just get buried. This is you're playing on the weekend, hopefully, of Selection Sunday. So this is a little different for BYU in the Big 12.
Let me be as clear as I possibly can be here. When it comes to single elimination tournament format in college basketball, it does not matter what the seed is in large part. It is all about matchups, whether it's the Big 12 tournament, whether it's a preseason tournament, whether it's March Madness and the NCAA tournament. It is about matchups. So I am 100% agreeing with you that it matters who BYU could potentially play. And the most ideal scenario, sure, would be that BYU gets the double bye and they're the 4 seed. And Texas Tech, who I believe is a better matchup for BYU than many of the other higher caliber teams in the Big 12, is there at the 5 seed. And maybe BYU's playing Tech on Thursday in that 4-5 matchup. That to me is the ideal scenario. I don't care whether BYU is the 4 or the 5.
I don't think the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee cares either, Spence. They won't go, well, they were a 4 seed, and they'll just look at the resume and what wins and losses they have and quads and net and everything.
It's not going to matter if BYU is the 4 or the 5 in the Big 12 to the Selection Committee. It really won't.
Now, for Ali Khalifa's knee, I think it does matter if BYU is the 4 or 5 because I don't know how effective he's going to be in game 2 and or 3 if you get to play that, right?
Rest.
Maybe he's good to go, and I don't know. He left the last game and had early, and then he came back. He had his ankle iced after the game, which isn't uncommon, right? But for his knee, I think that might matter. But ultimately, BYU needs to win a game at least in Kansas City. So whatever scenario creates that, great.
if BYU can earn a double bye, incredible.
Awesome. Great.
And we'll get into the specifics of that. In fact, why don't we go right now?
Let's go.
Let's discuss how that actually happens, because we both care about matchup. Okay, but for me, whatever, 4 or 5, just Texas Tech. I want no part of Kansas.
I don't want Kansas.
Kansas City, especially early in this tournament, given what BYU just did at Kansas.
If you thought it was, yeah, exactly. You won the one that was there. If you thought it was hard beating Gonzaga in Las Vegas, just wait for Kansas in Kansas City. 45 minutes from campus. They didn't win this tournament last year, Spence, but this is the Kansas Invitational. It's more Gonzaga in the WCC kind of historically. Like, St. Mary's or whatever got them twice. Okay, if BYU goes 2-0, let's talk.
Then they're the 4th
They
seed.
finish 11-7. Based on the tournament tiebreakers and whatnot, BYU's not going to be able to get to 3, we don't think. It'd have to be some scenario we haven't looked at. It's crazy because some teams play once, some teams play twice.
With Baylor beating Texas last night, I do not see a path to BYU being the 3 seed.
Texas beating Baylor. Had they beaten Baylor last night, there was a shot for the 3.
Yes.
Now the highest seed BYU can get seems like the 4. So it's not really Baylor that BYU's going for. It's Tech. The hope is that Tech loses tonight against Oklahoma State and to Baylor Saturday, and then BYU could afford a 1-1 scenario, because they lose the tiebreaker to Tech in the head-to-head. The second tiebreaker, by the way, if you're tied, is you go record versus top of the conference all the way down until it breaks up. And that's if there are 2 teams tied. If there are 3 or more tied, you get into a group and you go record versus the group. So it gets kind of complicated. But the reality is BYU is likely as high as the 4, as low as the 6. If BYU goes 0-2, there is a scenario where BYU could probably slide to the 7. They own tiebreakers over some of the homies down there. But the hope is you got to win at least 1 game this week. The reality is BYU is likely going 1-1. They're 10-8, and then if things worked out, perhaps you could be the 4.
The reality is,
but you're probably a 5 or 6.
Most of the teams in play here for the 4 seed are percentage-wise gonna go 1-1 this week. Texas Tech plays West Virginia. No, they play Oklahoma State tonight.
Go Cowboys.
They're a 2.5-point favorite against Oklahoma State. That game is in Stillwater. I think Texas Tech's going to find a way to win.
Oklahoma State, can you do what you did to Brigham Young and just shoot the lights out?
Okay.
Do you mind just doing that again?
So here's the thing about that,
nice.
though. Here's the tricky part about if you care more about matchups. If Texas Tech loses tonight, they play Baylor this weekend, and they will be an underdog in that game too. Yeah. Texas Tech could finish 9-9. Kansas is going to go 1-1 this week, Jarom. They're going to beat Kansas State.
And then they're
going to lose at Houston.
Yeah. And that Texas Tech is hosting Baylor, by the way.
Which means BYU would then be the 4 seed, and Kansas would be the 5 seed at 10-8, and Texas Tech would be the 6 seed at 9-9.
That's not a great scenario.
I don't like that. So I'm actually rooting for Texas Tech tonight.
So you want BYU to be the 5?
Yeah, I want BYU to face Texas Tech.
You want BYU to be the 5?
Or the 4. Doesn't matter.
Or the 4.
As long as they face Texas Tech at some point. I feel like that is the best matchup. Yep. BYU, to get to the 4 seed, has to win both games, which means beating Iowa State, which is a huge ask.
If that happens, awesome. How many wishes do you get? Has BYU used all 3 yet? Because one of them was winning at Kansas. I promise you that.
And maybe one was eliminating a 17-point deficit at halftime to beat TCU.
Right? Some of you might have used your 3rd wish on that.
Okay. I feel
what was the second one? Beating Georgia State.
All 3 teams are going to finish 10-8. That is what I think is going to happen. BYU, Texas Tech, and Kansas. And Texas Tech will win the tiebreak against both BYU and Kansas.
Yes.
They'll be the 4 seed, BYU be the 5 seed, and Kansas would be the 6 seed. And BYU would avoid Kansas in the early part of their tournament run, which I think is the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Just don't go 0-2. BYU cannot go 0-2.
If BYU loses twice to Oklahoma State, holy mackerel, no.
Now BYU is staring down a first-round matchup with somebody like TCU or Oklahoma or Texas.
Someone that's a little too tough for your first game.
Not great.
Granted, Texas Tech is a tough first game if you're the 4, but it's about where you're at in the tournament. Just win a game in Kansas City. Win a game. Come on, Pat, get another quad 2 or quad 1 win.
I'm telling you, root for Texas Tech to win tonight and then lose to Baylor if you want that matchup for sure between Tech and BYU.
Root for Kansas State against Kansas. How about that?
10.5-point underdog Kansas State at Kansas.
Hey, they won in Lawrence. They won at home. They can win in Lawrence.
All right, our question of the day. Do you care more about BYU's potential seeding or matchup in the Big 12 tournament. I'm not saying a 4 seed wouldn't be incredible. A double bye would be awesome. But who's your matchup when you get through to that double bye? Sharon on X says, matchup. The more games BYU can win in the Big 12 tournament will help their seeding in the Big Dance, which is what you were talking about, Jarom.
Yeah, another quad 1 or 2 win. Yeah, just what. Well, I guess they don't need it. There's a scenario where they go one and done and lose, and they're the same seed. I would just rather be a 5 than a 6 in the NCAA tournament. And if that win is kind of the
one that pushes
the thing that like
you on the 5
keeps
seed?
You there, then I love that idea. If Lenardi says no, it doesn't matter, they just stay a 5, then it didn't matter. But it'd just be nice to go to Kansas City year 1, win a game, right? You don't want to show up there and have this great regular season, then in one game. You'd like to show up and win a game. Come on.
Some.byu.dude on X says,
this is your burner, right?
Seeding matters more to him. If we're a 5th seed, BYU would have to play a game and then face the number 4 seed. BYU skips that as the 4 seed. I think matchups are one thing, but every team is competent.
Yeah.
I'd take playing one less game.
Ali Khalifa's knees, this would be a good scenario for him that way. To be the 4 and just kind of, okay, all in on that one win. And then you just see what you can do the next day.
The best, I'm telling you, the best case scenario for BYU. Win both this week, and Texas Tech and Kansas go 1-1, and BYU's the 4 seed, and Texas Tech is the 5 seed. That is as blue-goggled awesome as you can get.
I stopped listening and win both this week because that's what I hope happens. If that happens, I don't really care what else is next.
Okay.
Topic 2. BYU football held spring practice number 2 yesterday. Here's offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick on the QB battle behind Jake Retzloff and Gary Bohannon.
Some good things. We're just very early still. Jake looks like a veteran player, like he really knows what he's doing out here. He knows the offense well. And Gary's learning our stuff. A lot of the stuff are things he did at Baylor, just different terminology. So he's got to get up to speed with everybody at just being able to process that stuff as quickly as we will need him to in a game. But so far, I've seen a lot of good things from those guys.
It's too bad there's no spring game like last year because there's a quarterback battle. It'd just be nice, right? It's too bad.
I know, and the coaching staff at BYU just is not inclined. They're just not inclined to hold a spring. They even when they do it, they don't really like it.
And Lavelle Edwards Stadium's grass is being redone, and so they'd have to do it at Provo High, and they're not doing it at old Provo High, right?
Right. I get it. I understand there's a lot of logistical nightmares to kind of work through if you did want to hold a spring game this season, but the staff is, I think they're happy. They're just like, yeah, just let's go to work. Just let us do our thing, whatever.
I think we're going to get into fall camp before we know who the guy is, by the way. I don't think it'll be named after spring. I just think they want the maximum amount of reps for that person to see who really earns it. And if one guy really sticks out and deserves to be the guy, that's kind of an indictment on the second guy in spring. I think they'll need more time going into fall camp.
Gary Bohannon needs more time. I know that he understands the offense, and we're going to talk to him later in the show. I talked to him yesterday and asked him about these very questions, like how comfortable do you really feel with the verbiage? And because you recognize things, but there are just different nuances for sure, and Jake Retzloff has an advantage there. Gary Bohannon needs the summer to get used to all of that stuff, player run practices and everything that they can possibly do without coaches there. Yeah, they need time. Aaron Roderick also spoke about the number one priority for the offense and what needs to be done to make that happen.
Establish our run game. That's number one. Running the ball is 11-man. It's an 11-man deal every play. Obviously, it starts up front, but it's tight ends, it's receivers, it's the quarterback getting us into the right play. A lot of our run plays are audibles or have the ability to be audibles. Sometimes occasionally it's an RPO. We don't run a ton of those, but we do run some. And it's play action pass fitting together with the runs. So it's all of it. It's an 11-man deal, but that is our number one priority. We got to get back to running the football the way we did the 3 years prior to last year.
Amen to that. TJ Woods on the offensive line, coaching them up, trying to get those guys right. And the two running backs right now are clearly LJ Martin, number one, and Miles Davis, number two. And for what it's worth, we were watching Miles Davis closely yesterday. He has trimmed down. He looks lighter. He looks more
He didn't look that big before.
He looks faster.
Faster? He was already fast.
Broke off a nice run down the sideline. And immediately I was standing next to our producer, Colton Potter. I said, does he not look more trim and fat? Like, he looks faster. And sure enough, he's dropped.
But is he faster than Keaton Slovis?
Indeed he is. I can guarantee you that. Those are the two guys. And then there are a bunch of freshman running backs after that are and we don't know what's going to happen with Hinckley Ropati. I don't know. Like, is he back? Is he healthy?
We should play Name Your Polynesian
okay?
BYU running back. That'd be really fun.
Like, yeah, there are a lot.
Demuni, Nukulewe Hello.
Yes.
Hinckley Ropati.
There are more.
Pokai Honga.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ones, man. I love it.
But they're all very young outside of Ropati. So Miles Davis, probably number 2. LJ Martin looks good, strong. He's going to be the number 1 guy. Is that enough to find what BYU wants in the run game, or do you need more depth there?
To be a starting or 2-deep running back at BYU, do you have to sound like a jazz musician name? LJ Martin on sax. Miles Davis on trumpet.
Clearly.
Miles Davis.
Okay.
Let's go. Defense coordinator Jay Hill spoke about why he and the staff have focused so much on improving the front 7 this offseason.
We got to get better there. There were certain games in the Big 12 where we either weren't big enough or stout enough, or just, we didn't make the proper fits, or whatever reason. We got to be much more stout inside than we were last year.
This always and forever in football. So, yeah, the better the front 7 for BYU is, the better the secondary will be. It's a crazy relationship that way.
How much of a step forward can the defensive line take in 1 year?
They're pretty young still, and they didn't, boost it too much from the portal outside of what, Jack Kelly and Tui Saili. Those two feel like, okay, they're in and they're big time in the mix. I like who they got out of high school, but it takes a couple years for them to have a real impact.
Jack's going to play linebacker, yeah? Or, okay, so.
He'll have an impact, don't get me wrong, and Tui will. But outside of that, it's like, okay, who else are the guys? He also had a quote saying, listen, we're getting better, but we haven't established who the starters are, right? And it's early spring ball. You don't really have to do that until fall camp if you don't want.
You bring
but
back
BYU's
some guys.
They got a veteran group, but can these guys do the men's basketball thing, which is same dudes, way better?
Yes. Tyler
That's the
Batty,
hope.
John Nelson.
And Tyler was good enough.
Can they take another step and that core stays intact?
Like Mangelson, and yeah.
You know how strongly I feel about this core idea? I'm hoping that BYU football can take the page out of BYU basketball's book. Can they go on a European trip? Can we send football
can
on a
football
European trip?
go to Australia or something? Yeah.
Send them somewhere.
Where does a football team go?
Florida?
Canada? To play the Canadian Football League game? They're like, you know how to play.
We went down to Tijuana.
These rules are weird. What's up with this?
I just want that cohesion, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm all in on it.